Concepts of democracy.
The first concept of democracy states that you should recognize the fundamental worth and dignity of all persons. This means that every person, under any circumstance, has worth and dignity. Advertising in the United States does not recognize the worth and dignity of women. Advertising uses women to sell products. According to The Sexy Lie by Caroline Heldman, 96% of objectified bodies in advertising are women. Objectification of women means that they are stripped of all human qualities and they are then seen as an object. Heldman asks 7 questions about the objectification of women in advertising. They are yes or no questions used to identify if a person is being objectified in an ad or not. It was obvious that the women photographed were objectified. It has even begun to affect the way society sees women. According to research published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, women are more likely to be picked apart by the brain and seen as parts rather than a whole. Men, on the other hand, are processed as a whole rather than the sum of their parts. Women aren't seen as a whole, therefore they are being portrayed as having no worth or dignity.
The second concept of democracy states that you should rest on the concept of respect for the equality of all persons. The United States does not do that. According to the study, Are Emily and Brendan more employable than Lakeisha and Jamal? African American sounding names are 50% less likely to get a call back for an interview than someone with a white sounding name. From July 2001 to May 2002, Bertrand and Melanathan sent fake resumes to 1,300 job positions that had help wanted ads. 5,000 resumes were sent out. Each resume was randomly assigned a white sounding name, Brendan Baker, or an African American sounding name, Jamal Jones. Once they would get to the interview stage, the chances of getting the job may dramatically change. Getting to that stage, though, requires jumping over those racial hurdles for African Americans. Bertrand says, I think most African Americans already realize they need to work much harder than whites to get a job. They will have to send more resumes and fight to get that first job interview. This depicts the racial barriers that African Americans are subjected to.
The third concept of democracy states that the state should have a faith in minority rule and an insistence upon minority rights. This means that democracy should respect minority rights by giving the minority the opportunity to become a majority through legal means, and by making sure that the minority can openly voice its views. First, the United States failed with this concept of democracy. On September 21, 1996, the United States enacted the Defense of Marriage Act, also known as DOMA, which allowed states to refuse the marriage of same-sex couples under the laws of other states. The United States ultimately succeeded in providing minority rights when they ruled Section 3 of DOMA unconstitutional. Prior to this repeal, same-sex couples were not allowed the same federal marriage benefits as opposite-sex couples. The change of Section 3 of DOMA was a small step in the right direction in providing the most constitutional rights for same-sex couples. Although it didn't force all states to recognize gay marriage, it erased the wall that separated same-sex and opposite-sex couples with their rights. Same-sex spouses and opposite-sex spouses can now receive the same insurance benefits and file joint tax returns. Once same-sex couples have these rights, they cannot be taken away. The Supreme Court has affirmed that all loving and committed couples who marry deserve equal legal respect and treatment.
The fourth concept of democracy states that we should have an acceptance of the necessity of compromise. This means that we should make compromises in our jobs and everyday life. The United States made a great compromise in 1877. In 1876, Democrats complained that Samuel J. Tilden was cheated out of being elected for presidency. In exchange for these 4 things, Democrats would accept Hayes's presidency with open arms to form the Compromise of 1877. All federal troops would be removed from the Confederate States. One Southern Democrat would have to be appointed to Hayes' cabinet, construction of another transcontinental railroad, and legislation to help industrialize the South and get them back on their feet after the Civil War. This marked the end of the Reconstruction era for the United States.
The fifth and final concept of democracy is the insistence upon the widest possible degree of individual freedom. This means that each individual should be as free as possible as long as it doesn't start infringing upon another person's freedoms. Chatfield High School is a public school run by the government, and its school dress code does not comply with the fifth concept of democracy. The student handbook states that inappropriate clothing is not to be worn at school. Inappropriate clothing includes, but is not limited to, short shorts, skimpy tank tops, tops that expose the midriff, and other clothing that is not in keeping with community standards. What you wear to school has to be conservative enough for the person turning you into the principal. There are no means of measure when it comes to measuring what skimpy is. The same shirt could hang differently on every person that puts it on. Hats are also not allowed to be worn during school hours. There are no reasons why this is, it just states that hats are not to be worn unless the building principal allows it. The rules in the student handbook are very vague. These rules infringe upon people's individual freedoms by not allowing them to wear what they desire. The student handbook does not comply with the concept of insisting the widest possible degree of individual freedom.
The United States makes efforts to follow the American concepts of democracy. However, they can't make everything perfect. The government works every day to perfect our country.